I wish I was joking, but so
I know it's
this is a real test. This is the test for a Fulbright scholar. Right here is what's happening. Do you want me to set a timer for you, Yuli?
Like how much time do I have?
I'm asking you, how much time do you want?
Well, I prefer the presentation for 15 minutes, but I think it's going to take longer.
Okay, I'll set it for 15, and then when it goes off, you can tell me what we need to do then.
Well, I'm trying to make kind of a transition between that presentation and mine. So I know that you were kind of designing like a lesson plan including intercultural things.
Yeah,
I don't have
looking at multilingual learners in lesson planning.
Okay.
Yeah, how we highlight the needs of learners that are
Okay.
multi-language.
So I'm going to tell you about how is my teaching experience teaching English as a foreign language. That is the meaning of TEFL in a cultural differentiated classroom. And before I start, I want you to select a color, the one that you like. If you don't want to select a color, I can give you an M&M and you can randomly select one. Would you like an M&M?
I'll take an M&M. I mean, if you're offering candy.
So yeah, so maybe. So you can just randomly have one. So you have blue.
The best one.
Exciting. Here we go. Yeah.
Oh, I have a.
Yeah, now the question is mixing it, randomize it more.
The pocket of brown.
I don't know if it does or not.
Or are you trying to skew the results?
Oh, that is the one I wanted. Green, baby.
I don't have any yellow. I don't know what to do.
It's a bad match.
Okay, whatever.
It even matches your
Sure.
folder.
Yeah, if you give me a handful, I'll be yellow.
It matches your folder. That's not
Ow!
Oh, it matches the photos.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna try to coordinate
Okay.
like what color.
I'll be yellow.
So with that color, you will answer a question that I have here, and I want you to please like join in partners and just discuss that question. So it's based on the color that you got. It's just to have an idea because you already know a lot of me about how is my learning process of English and how is the bilingual policy in Colombia, but I don't know anything about you in relation to learning some languages. So who got the brown color? You. Okay. So do you speak any other language apart from English?
You should start on this one.
Okay. I was a Spanish major. I try
Wow.
to speak Spanish still.
Wow. Nice.
Not as well as I'd like to say in Spanish.
Okay. And what about you?
I took 4 years of Spanish in high school. I think I could hold like a consistent like Spanish 2 level of understanding, considering that I haven't touched it for like 5 years, and the fact that in my 4th year they tried to cram so much down our throat that not only did I not learn 4, I also forgot 3. So I'm now back to like Spanish 2. But my dad also is kind of, he's like a practical Spanish speaker. He's not fluent, but like he knows enough to hold a conversation.
Okay.
So he'll like when we're in a Mexican restaurant, like encourage us to like use Spanish whenever we can.
Oh, I didn't know that. I should have spoken Spanish more in this class.
Yes, I think so.
So who got the blue? You. Beatrice, have you ever traveled to a non-English speaker
Yes,
country?
I have.
Where?
I went to Germany and Italy and Mexico.
How did you handle with the language? Like,
Ah.
could you communicate in English or did you have any words in German?
I was young in most of them, and I always had someone who spoke both with me, so I was able to lean on others.
Okay.
But I tried to learn a couple phrases to
Okay,
be like,
good.
please, thank you.
Okay. Is it difficult?
Yes.
Trying to communicate in other language? Okay, who got the red one? You. Do you often talk to a person from a different country?
I do. My best friend Ana Paula is from Mexico, and she was my roommate last year. She's in the theater department. She graduated with me. Going to visit her for Thanksgiving, so we're going on Tuesday. She lives in Chicago now, but yeah, she's from.
And how do you communicate in English, Spanish?
I know some Spanish, but not nearly enough. I also did 4 years in high school. When her mom and grandma came to visit for Nutcrackers last Christmas. And I remembered more than I thought I did. Like I could carry on a conversation and at least could pick out words when she was talking. And I was like, ah, yes, I can glean this. But in general, not enough. But we do. AP and Caitlin and I watch Locked Up. It's called Vis-a-Vis, and it's a show on Netflix that's in Spanish. And so like we have subtitles on, but I'm always like, that's not what that word means. And AP's always like, they're in Spanish, and I'm always like, you're right, it's different. I know. But I like experiencing other languages. I think they're fun. I wish I knew more, but
Okay, good. So did anyone got the orange? I think no one. What about the yellow?
I got yellow.
Yes. Is there
Um,
any language that you would like to
I would
learn?
like to learn all of the languages, but I think one that I would really like to learn is French because I'm a Francophile. I love everything French. And that's actually one of the things that I value about my native language is English borrows from so many languages.
Mhm.
And so I just like the way it sounds, and I like French food, and I like art, and I love Paris.
So it's more related to
Culture, yeah, for sure.
And as a
Yeah.
LaSallian educator, LaSalle was French.
Oh yeah,
LaSalle was
that's true.
French,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Okay.
for sure.
Have you ever tried like to learn it? Or just-
Well, when we visited Paris, I tried to speak it in greeting and also by offering gratitude for things. But they knew right away. So it immediately. So the question about have you ever traveled to a non-English speaker country is interesting because we've traveled in Ireland, which has two languages, and then in Italy and France and Scandinavia, Finland, and most of those countries, everybody speaks more than one language.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
it wasn't,
okay.
yeah, it wasn't dominant, but it was easy to navigate because mostly people would speak English.
English. Okay. Who got the green one? Have you ever tried to communicate with someone who doesn't speak your language?
Yes.
Who
Um,
was that?
I have been to Europe, and when I say Europe, I mean all of it.
Wow.
And I lived in Germany for a while, and I went to a school with a lot of international students. So that was a fairly common experience.
Okay. Anthony, what did you have? I didn't give you candy?
oh yeah, no, I have blue.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
back up.
So I've been to Europe too, and non-English speaking countries
Wow.
there.
I didn't know that about you, and I think one of the things that have shaped my perception toward teaching languages is just the fact of being abroad and being able to communicate and struggling with trying to demand something in another language which is not the native one. And that has shaped my perception as a teacher and also tried to make me feel like in another position when I try to understand my learners. So that's why I wanted to know that about you. Well, we have some time. We work all the time. And somehow that shapes the way as we perceive others. So maybe your perception as a native English speaker will be different than mine. So I just want to clarify that because I will talk today about my perception as an English language teacher, EFL, English as a foreign language, in a multicultural country. And I will also talk about how is that also held in Spanish, which is a dominant language in Colombia. So I will tell you about the experiences in both cases. So so as an English, as a foreign language teacher, you already know, because I think I presented the first time, you were the first group of people I presented my research project in English, and then they repeated I have to present again in another class and they have double. But I think the second time you clarify more things. So they already know that we are, of course, we are a Latin American country, but we center the bilingual language policy just in English, which is really sad. And apart from that, we are measured, our level of English is measured by the Common European Framework, as I already told you, that says which kind of levels, in which level you are in English. there are some reasons why do we have this in Colombia, but the first, well, one of the main ones is because we have these two institutions that are the British Council and the Centro Colombo Americano, and they kind of state what kind of language, in terms of English, you should teach in a school, you know? So they kind of present like a standardized norm way of teaching English. And why English in Colombia? In 2020, we have like a free trade agreement between the United States and Colombia. So because of that, they assume that all Colombians need to learn English. And apart from that, I have found in my research that there is a lot of money that is moved between the British Council, the Colombo Americano, and the Colombian Ministry of Education. So they need to maintain that, that kind of strategies to establish the need that in our country we need the English because they sell all the courses, the international exams. So there is a lot of business behind that. So because of that, we have a bilingual language policy that is presented like top-down language policy. So it's the state influenced by the British Council, like for other policies, is the state that the one that set the language policy, and then it comes to us, and we as teachers we just have to operate that language policy. We don't have any voice in that language policy building. So that's the way as that operates. As I told you before, just the fact that we have the common European framework in Colombia shapes like our language ideology when we teach English. So it shapes and it says what correct English should be. So it sells the idea of what correct language you should put in the classrooms. Of course, they standardize the English, so we don't have like there is just one English that is valid. Yeah.
Is that British English or American English?
British and American. So
Oh, wow.
the British Council is British,
Mhm.
and the Centro Colombo Americano is from the American English.
Yeah.
So like the standard idea of English is they both.
Oh, interesting. So
Mhm.
what spelling is more common?
How do you
Oh,
spell
yeah.
gray?
Right.
Spell
Yeah.
organized.
Or like, what is a biscuit?
Yeah, like we try to use both in our classes. But in my case, as I have traveled more to America, my accent, well, is not like Native American, but I cannot speak British. Like in general, it's more like American because it's closer to Colombia. So this is the idea that we have to speak standardized English. So the legitimate language is just the one that can be understood by everyone, and that nor like for the society is the good English, you know. So there are don't consider any variety of English, like maybe I don't know with a specific accents, like for example Indian English, I don't know Caribbean English. No, it's just the one that you can understand. And that, as a result, like established the separation of language. So the language is just seen as a system of codes, but not as a part of the human, you know? Because it's not only that you can just structure some grammar structures and vocabulary and just put that together to say a word, to say a sentence, but also what learning a language implies, you know? Like it's there are more things that are beyond that is more related like to cultural development in general. So that is the language ideology behind that. And well, I was trying to see what is the intersection between language and race and how that shapes the way we teach and how especially minorities feel towards that language policy. So if you want to read more, there is some research that are being held by Jonathan Rosas. He is from Puerto Rico, but he is conducting some research here in the United States, and he tries to develop that the concept of racial linguistics, which is the intersection between language and race, and how minoritized people just are left behind because of those dominant policies. So that's where we are in Colombia, and I found this, which is the cultural proficiency continuum, and I found this as a way to evaluate myself as a teacher and to at least like to set a position in all that language policy. So I found out that I started by cultural destructiveness, which is the idea that the language policy try to establish. Like they always say that we have to conduct our classes in just English. So we basically in Colombia, in my classroom, I don't have students that speaks any other languages. So I basically banish Spanish, and we with that language policies we just try to standardize English because at the end the students will be level.
I know it's awful, isn't it? I knew.
I will try to speak a little faster.
Okay.
And but yeah, this is a way like to evaluate where I am. Okay. So so based on that, I have like established some strategies in my classroom which go from translanguaging to and to promote like what I look always is to promote linguistic and social justice in my students in my classroom so they can feel like safe. So with that in mind, what I have done is just to I will tell you a little bit about the school. That is the school where I work. It's a public school, as I already mentioned. We have an English immersion class, which is just the name because there is nothing. I mean, not everything is in English. I have monolingual students. They just speak Spanish, no more. But they come from different social cultural background, and this is due in part for the internal migration. You know, like the socio-political situation in Colombia makes that a lot of people migrate inside the country. So that's why I receive many students from all around Colombia, and this is the map of Bogota. These are like the social, economic, and status, and I work here. You see, like it's just uh, this is just to explain that here is like a avenue, a street that connects. There is only one avenue that connects this part of the country with Bogota. So for that reason, I receive a lot of internal migrate people because that is the only way. That is the first neighborhood they have to go by to enter to Bogota. So for that reason, I receive students from all around the country and in minor percentage from Venezuela. But they all speak Spanish. So I'm trying to move to that level to include and empower other kind of teaching English from a less separative, yeah, less yeah, reductive vision of language. So I'm trying to use translanguaging. I don't know if you are familiar with the word translanguaging. I will explain. And I put a lot of effort on materials because we do have materials, but they are all online. I mean, in the public school, the students they don't have books, they don't have any materials. So, and there are some materials that are designed by the British Council and the Colombian Americano, but they are not centered in the Colombian context. So when the kids see the picture, they don't see it themselves. They just see people with other characteristics. So this is translanguaging. Translanguaging is using the student linguistic repertoire to communicate. That's it. And we use translanguaging. So I don't know if you can see, for this class I asked them to talk about we were talking about healthy food, and they have to at the end of the class to tell what favorite food they like from the country. So for example, in this case, she said she mixed both Spanish and English because she didn't have the words in English, so she has to use Spanish. And for me, it was correct. Like the main point of translanguages is that the students could be able to express themselves in any repertoire. So that is something that that I'm trying to promote in my English classes, and that is something that is being held here in the United States, especially I think in California. So that is like the new trend in teaching English. So, and of course, as I told you before, I put a lot of effort in designing materials. So I try to put everything into context and to make as possible that the students can recognize themselves in the material that I selected. So, and another thing, we don't have books as I already mentioned. So I have designed like a virtual book for them. So I use when the students in general in my school enter to the institution, the parents must sign like a permission for for us, so we can be able to use the pictures of the students without any problem. So that is one student, and she is basically telling a story of herself, and that is the school. And another thing that I use is English with Colombian accents. That is something that is being into consideration in translation, like just to move beyond the fact that there is just one standardized English, but also that there are many accents that we have to consider in that. So I didn't put the audio there, but yeah, that is basically a girl speaking English in with the Colombian accent. I'm not going to show this. It's just the first part, which is a little. There is a little bit of translanguaging. No, no, it doesn't have some. Well, it's basically one girl who said that she is like speaking English and Spanish using translanguaging and using some words like that are very popular in Colombia, but she uses both, like English and the Colombian.
There is sound coming out, so if you turn it up, you might be able to hear it.
Just the knob there.
No, just the first part.
Good morning, Su Merced. This is the school garden. Aquí plantamos alimentos orgánicos que luego llevamos a nuestras mesas. Puedes encontrar tomatoes, potatoes, figs, cabbage, pumpkins y muchas cosas más.
So that is more or less how translanguaging works. And I also try to incorporate like all kind of experiences when they learn English, just to abolish that separate vision of language. So in this case, they were just trying a cake, and they were trying to say what is to guess what the secret ingredient was, and things like that. And this is, I'm just going to play just for um, 30 seconds. One of the things that we found in the materials that we get from the internet is that everything is brought from another country. So I prepare the materials with the conditions that are in Colombia. So this is part of the material that I prepared for them.
Production not only of coffee,
So basically, when they if we are going to talk about the farm animals, the idea they have about farm animals is this one, no other one. So it's good, like they know that maybe through English they can also talk about their
planning in bags until they.
Another thing, I'm not going to show this one. It's about
Really, just one quick question. Is it okay if I share this
Yes.
slideshow with them?
Yeah.
So I think some of these videos you're gonna wanna probably peruse a little bit, so if it's okay with you, I'll
Yeah.
just post it on the archive.
Yeah. It's okay. And this one is just to well, I just create like really like how can I say that? Like just create the conditions that so they can practice English not only between them but also with the community. So I got the parents there. In that case, in that situation, they were supposed to create like a supermarket. So we got the parents involved and the people that work in the school also. So and yeah, and the other one is Spanish, just to change and how is Spanish seen in Colombia. So you will say by you talk that there are many languages in Colombia. Yeah, Spanish is the main language in Colombia, but we have some minorities, but those minorities are not taken into account in the bilingual policy. So there are other bilinguals that are just left behind in that bilingual policy. And when we do have special schools for this population, but it like the bilingual policy just go again to the fact that Spanish in this case is the dominant language. So when they attend to the schools, they can be, I mean, in the same classroom can be students that speak more than one language, but they all they are taught everything in Spanish. And when they have to take a national exam, is in Spanish, not in the native language, which is unfair for them. So yeah, so my invitation is to identify. I know that maybe there could be some connections to the experiences that you will have in the schools, but I just wanted to take the things that you maybe can have. So my invitation is to identify and interrogate like how are my students feeling? What is my idea of language? I'm trying to make them use like a standardized. I'm just talking because I know that here there is a lot of immigrant population. So just to think from the other side, like how would they feel when they have to produce in English and to just adjust to the norm. And just to this is just a way to reflect like where you are, where would you be, where would you want to be as an educator. And this is just part mm, of the work of that some teachers made in California, uh, just trying to make visible all the inequity that is in the classroom regarding language. And also an invitation is just to see more beyond race. You know, race is something that you can physically see, like you can tell about a person, but just go beyond and just look the other part of a person. Um, this is just for further reading. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I know Nate has a question, but invite any other questions.
So you said in your classroom, like at your school, like some of the kids are learning English and some of them aren't. How is the decision made who's learning English and who isn't? What is the like who's making that distinction or who's making that decision? What is the distinction between the two groups?
They all learn English, but in
Oh.
one class. They just have
Okay.
one class, and all of them have to learn English because that is what the norm and the bilingual policy says. That all of them in, I mean, in all Colombia, they have to learn English, but the problem is that they don't give the conditions for learning it. As I already tell you, in my school, we are privileged because I'm conducting a project with them, so that's why we can somehow guarantee that they have access to an English classes. But in general, in Colombia, we don't have teachers of English. But at the end, when they finish the school, they are measured. So that's when you say, is labeling what really matters here? Because at the end, like schools and students will be measured, like in terms of English, for how much English do they know. But they don't. In some point, that is the only way as they can, yeah, like they can make some generalization about the school without considering that we don't have the same conditions. So it's kind of difficult.
So every kid is learning English, but not every kid is speaking it regularly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's the distinction.
Yeah, in
Okay.
Colombia, we don't have that access to English.
Right.
So that's why I personally I don't practice English in my country. I don't have that facility. But if I were working in a private school with a with high income students go, like probably we have more practice. But in public school we don't have.
Did this same bilingual policy exist when you were in school?
At that time, we also, I mean, I were taught English, but in elementary, it was just 1 hour per week. Was kind of the same, but from 2016, the Ministry of Education designed like a framework for teaching English and to establish which level each one of the students should be. So they were like a framework, but that is the only difference. Apart from that, it's the same. So there is nothing has changed in terms of conditions.
What did interrupt mean? Because you had identify, interrogate, interrupt, and you explained interrogate. But what did interrupt mean?
Interruption is just like in my case, it's just to take a step aside to see the perspective. Like, for example, I didn't notice all that unfair things that were happening within the bilingual policy until I arrived here. Because I had the necessity to step behind and to see from other perspective. And from that way, I just interrupt, you know? I had that idea before coming, but not that I didn't do a lot of research in that, and I somehow tried just to interrupt my classroom practices to establish more linguistic and social justice for my students. I think that in the way that you understand how the system works, you will interrupt. Like in my case, like this is not fair. So you are asking me to complete or to teach a standardized way of English, but that is not fair for them. They are not giving me the conditions to do so. But the same is the way as I do agency from my position as a teacher. So that's the way I interact. So I'm not agree with that, but I need to change. Like I know maybe it can take a lot of time until we all realize that things are not working properly, but we can just not assume that, okay, so I'm not doing anything, I'm just going to operate. No, you have to just stop, take perspective, and change your teaching practices. That's the way as I can explain that.
Well, let's share our gratitude. Thank you, Yuli. So, continuing to inform this community, and I think interrupt is probably a good bridge because it's also connected to this idea of culturally responsive teaching, because much of culturally responsive teaching involves interruption, because we've been cultured, enculturated, we behave in certain ways, and many of those ways reinforce stereotypes and also dehumanizing biases that oftentimes we're unconscious of. And so I like the way you described it, the stepping back, sometimes stepping out of, because it's hard for a goldfish to know what it's like to not be in water, because we're in it all the time. We're surrounded by culture. And so in some ways, I want to use it as just another bridge to offer this up for you. And this is thinking about labels that we use. And so today we're talking about multilingual learners. We're talking about English learners, English language learners, teachers of English. So many terms, and some of them are evolutionary in nature. And so we're evolving. And I found this article by Pirelli, who talks about this idea of intersectionality in a way that's connected to language and culture. So, okay, you got it? Okay. Yeah. And I think there's some value here for this is in some ways, like I said, a bridging document. And, you know, we have limits on time, so I'm not expecting you to read it right now, but I did want to note that much of the language that has been used in the past is described as part of the deficit discourse. So if you use the label English language learner, it falls under the umbrella of deficit response. And it has this way of, as Yuli pointed out, only showing one part of a person, right? Sort of racializes how we see people, or it prioritizes what? English. Prioritizes it automatically. You have been enculturated. I have too. I use EL and ELL in regular conversation in my profession. This particular article has me thinking differently. And in some ways, it was an invitation just to interrupt my own thinking and to say there's a reason why multilingual learners is not just a fad, why it's important to understand the evolution of language, and that it should indeed humanize the systems in which we raise up the next generation. So I offer this to you as a way for you to think about your language, and I think it's probably it's in the syllabus, it's in articles, it's everywhere. So I even think of it in my own syllabus. Second language learner. What's better than second? First, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, an error on my part, just in thinking about the relationship between the intersection of language and culture, and how we're enculturated to think and speak in certain ways. So I just wanted to offer that up to you for your own edification. And I think, we have limited time, but I think you're probably naturally, I don't know if you're like me, making some connections between a framework for culturally responsive teaching, because this is calling for interruption.
Yeah, sorry, I know we have limited time, but I forgot to give you something that I brought you because today is my last class with you, and I forgot to give you a surprise. I know the prices are not okay for for teaching, but I just want you to have like some memory because I learned a lot from you, and I know this is a way of gratitude for being so open and for being so for welcoming me so well. So I didn't want to finish the class without that. I forgot it was part of the
Go ahead,
last.
share what you have to share.
So this is like we have in Colombia something that we call the sombrero volteado. This is a hat which is handmade. Well, this is not handmade, but this is kind of. So this is something that we have like a cultural symbol of Colombia because it's handmade and it is made with a specific tree in Colombia. So I just want you to keep this as a way of gratitude. I know it's not that much, but I just didn't want to miss this class to say thanks.
And I wouldn't mind, and I'd surely invite
Sorry.
any
Thank
gratitude
you.
that
So
you'd like to
sweet.
share with Julie. I have some things I'd like to say as well.
So you're going to the cities next and then
Fantastic, thank you.
Florida?
And then Florida. Yes.
Yeah, she passed the IQ test. She's going to Florida.
Oh,
Just in time
For research. Oh my goodness. My goodness.
This is fantastic.
So cool.
I love this.
Yeah, I forgot. It was to give them to you right after I finish my presentation.
Do
And I
people
forgot.
wear it at like events?
Oh, no.
Yeah, like if you go to rural zones in Colombia, like more like especially in the Caribbean, they will wear one of those. But if they are carnivals or things like that, like all of them will wear like sombrero volteado. Mm-hmm.
So we've just got a couple minutes left, and I would invite any thoughts that you